Bordeaux lights had a way of making Saturday nights feel like a movie. Warm golden bulbs glowed against dark wood and linen-draped tables. The air shimmered with laughter, the soft clink of glassware, and violins threading through conversations like silk. The place smelled faintly of roasted garlic, butter, and expensive wine. In the middle of all this polished chaos moved Lily Dawson. At 24, she had learned how to smile with her lips even when her eyes were tired. Her long blonde hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, a few strands falling free to frame her face as she weaved between tables. One hand balanced a tray full of glasses, the other carried a water pitcher, each step precise and graceful. To most of the customers, she was just the pretty waitress who never got their order wrong. They had no idea how carefully she'd built that calm. On the far side of the restaurant, half shadowed in the soft light, sat a man alone at a table for two. His meal had gone cold. His wine glass was still nearly full. Alex Carter, 32, a name that if you followed business news meant something. Rumored millionaire, CEO, widower. Tonight, he looked like none of these things. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, shirt collar open, as if he'd loosened it in some quiet moment of suffocation. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes, hazel green, distant and pained, looked like they belonged to someone who had walked a long way through grief and hadn't yet found the exit. He traced a thumb around the rim of his glass, lost in thoughts he didn't intend to share with anyone. The restaurant kept moving, but around him there was a strange stillness, as if the world had stepped back and left him alone in his own storm. The storm in the room, however, started a few tables nearer to Lily. "I asked for medium rare," a man snapped, pushing his plate forward. "This is practically bleeding." "And my pasta's cold," another added. A small cluster of young professionals leaned back in their chairs, frustration brewing together like a bad cocktail. Their server, a girl who looked barely out of high school, stood frozen with her notepad clutched to her chest. I'm so sorry," she stammered, cheeks burning. I'll ask." Lily was at her side in 2 steps. "I'm so sorry your dishes weren't what you expected," she said smoothly, her voice calm, warm, and unhurried. "Let us fix them right away. We'll have the chef prepare fresh plates for you. And as a gesture from the house, you're welcome to choose any dessert on the menu. We really want you to leave happy tonight." The group's anger softened almost immediately. Complaints became mutters. One of them exhaled. "Yeah, okay, thanks." Lily flashed a professional smile and guided the new server away, murmuring reassurance under her breath, moving back into the rhythm of service like nothing had happened. But someone had noticed. At his corner table, Alex blinked, sat up slightly, and really looked at her for the first time. He watched the way she handled the upset customers without flinching, the way her shoulders stayed relaxed, and the way she made the panicking new girl feel safe with just a few quiet words. There was something about the way she carried herself, gentle but sure, kind but not weak. He set his wine glass down. He hadn't expected to feel anything tonight. A few minutes later, Lily stopped at the side station to refill a water jug. She hummed under her breath, already thinking of the last hour of her shift, the bus ride home, the bills waiting on her kitchen counter. She didn't notice him until he was standing almost beside her. "Excuse me," he said politely, voice low and steady. "I'm sorry to interrupt while you're working, but can I ask you something unusual?" She turned, eyes flicking briefly to his suit, his watch, then his face. Up close, his features were sharper, but there was exhaustion there too. "That depends," she replied carefully. "How unusual?" His lips twitched into the ghost of a smile, then fell away. He glanced around, making sure no one was listening, then met her eyes again. "Would you be my date?" he asked quietly, "for one day?" Lily stared. She thought she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "I know how that sounds," he said quickly. "I know, but I need help. and I'm willing to compensate you for your time generously." "That doesn't make it sound less strange," she muttered, though not unkindly. He exhaled slowly, as if bracing himself. "My mother is very sick," he said softly. "The doctors say she has months at best. She's worried about me. Worried that ever since," he paused, swallowing, "ever since my wife died, I've been alone." Lily's expression shifted. The world around them still buzzed with conversation, but her focus narrowed. "She keeps asking if I've met someone," he continued. "If there's a woman in my life. And I didn't want her to spend what time she has left worrying about me, so I told her there was." "You lied," Lily said gently. "Yes," he said. No excuse, no defense, just a quiet yes. "She wants to meet her, to know I'm not completely alone, and now I'm out of time and out of ideas." He drew in a breath. "So you want me to pretend," Lily asked, "to be your girlfriend for your mom?" "For one day," he said. "For one visit, one dinner, you meet her, we talk a little, you go home." "And after that?" "Nothing," he said. "After that you never have to see me again, no strings attached." He placed a matte black business card on the counter between them. His name gleamed in silver. "Alex Carter." Beside it he slid a folded check. Lily glanced at it mechanically, then froze. The amount made her blink. This is," her voice faltered. It was more than 2 months of her wages on a single slip of paper. "If you say no, I completely understand," Alex said quietly. "Really, I'm not trying to pressure you. You don't know me, I don't know you, but I watched how you handled that table, how you talked to that new server. You're kind. You're calm under pressure. You meant what you said about wanting them to leave smiling." He paused, his throat tightening. "You're the kind of woman my mother would want for me, the kind of woman she would believe." Lily looked up. His jaw was tight, shoulders pulled in. A man who carried too much weight in too small a space. "Please," he whispered, voice dropping, "just 24 hours." He didn't wait for her answer. He simply nodded once and walked away, leaving the card and the check on the marble. The restaurant continued, as if nothing monumental had just happened. But Lily felt like the ground had subtly shifted beneath her feet. She stared at the check long after he left. That night her apartment felt smaller than usual. The kitchen table wobbled slightly, held steady by a folded napkin under one leg. The overhead light flickered once before deciding to cooperate. A single slice of toast went cold on her plate as she sat staring at nothing. The check lay on the counter where she'd placed it, like a silent dare. She could refuse, tear it up, throw it away, go back to her quiet routines. But then she closed her eyes. She saw the way his fingers twitched near his glass as he spoke, the way his voice broke slightly when he mentioned his mother, the way he didn't try to use money to impress her, even though he easily could have. Not a billionaire caricature, not some arrogant suit. Just a broken man trying to give his dying mother one last piece of peace. Her phone sat beside her. His business card was next to it. She told herself she was just picking it up to look at it again. Instead, she found herself typing, "I'll do it, but just this once." She stared at the message for a full minute. Then she hit send. His response came almost immediately, as if he'd been holding his phone, waiting. "Thank you. I'll pick you up at 2." Her heart began to beat faster. The next afternoon, a sleek dark car pulled up outside her building exactly on time. Alex stepped out wearing another suit, this one dark blue and softer in style, no tie, coat open. He looked less like a CEO arriving for a meeting and more like a man arriving for something he couldn't define. "Hi," he said softly when she walked out in jeans and a simple top, coat pulled close. "Ready?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm here." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. Fair enough. They didn't talk much on the drive. The silence between them wasn't awkward, just full. He focused on the road, his hands at 10 and 2, fingers sometimes tapping the steering wheel whenever his thoughts ran ahead of him. When he finally pulled up in front of a glass-fronted boutique, Lily frowned. I work at a restaurant, not a gala," she said. "I can't afford to even breathe near these dresses." "You don't have to," he replied. "I said I'd take care of everything, remember. She hasn't seen me with anyone in years. I want her to feel like she's stepping into a dream. You deserve to look like one." She stared at him. "You know that sounds like a line, right?" "I'm out of practice with lines," he said quietly, "but I meant it." Inside, the staff greeted him by name. A stylist appeared as if summoned by thought. "Mr. Carter," she said, "we've got the options you requested." He stepped back and nodded toward Lily. "She'll decide, I'll wait." He gave her space, retreating to a nearby sofa, pulling out his phone but hardly looking at it. His eyes strayed to her more than the screen. Lily tried on dress after dress, soft blush, deep wine, dramatic black. They all felt like something she was borrowing from someone else's dream. Then the stylist brought out a pale blue silk gown. When Lily slipped it over her skin, something inside her stilled. The neckline dipped just enough to be elegant but modest. The fabric hugged and flowed in all the right places without making her feel like she was pretending to be a different person. She stepped out of the changing room slowly, fingers smoothing over the skirt. The boutique fell silent. Alex stood. His breath left him. For a full second, he just stared. She looked luminous under the boutique lighting, her hair now falling in soft waves around her shoulders, her eyes uncertain but bright. For a heartbeat, it was like someone had reached into his memories and brought them into the present. She looks like her. The thought hit him like impact. Like Sophie. His throat closed. He blinked hard and tore his gaze away, pretending to fix his sleeve, his jaw flexing. His hand rose to his eye for a split second before he forced it down. When he lifted his gaze again, Lily was watching him, confused. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," he said quietly. "You look," he paused, searching for the right word that wasn't haunted. "Perfect." A polite smile flitted over her lips, but deep down she felt something tiny and dangerous shift. She had expected this all to feel transactional, cold, performative. But his reaction had not been those things. His reaction felt real. They left just before sunset, the sky painted in streaks of gold and rose. Outside, he stepped ahead automatically and opened the car door for her. Not theatrically, not to show off, simply because that's what you do when you were raised to be gentle, not just powerful. Lily glanced at him before getting in. No one had done that for her in a long time. In the car, she watched his reflection in the window. The tightness in his jaw, the set of his mouth, the way his eyes softened when they weren't focused on anything in particular. Behind the polished suit and measured silence, she saw something heavy and deep. Loneliness. Not the showy kind that complains loudly. The kind that lives in the hollow, left behind by love. She found herself wondering about the woman in that empty space. The wife, Sophie, the life they must have had before everything stopped. She didn't ask. Not yet. As he pulled up near her building again, he stepped out of the car and walked her to her door, stopping one step below her. "Thank you for today," he said quietly. "You're thanking me before it even happens." "That's for saying yes," he replied. "Whether this goes well or not, I won't forget that you did." She hesitated. "Are you sure about all this, Alex?" "No," he admitted, voice barely above a murmur. "But my mother deserves to die believing I won't spend the rest of my life alone in a penthouse full of ghosts." Her chest tightened. "I'll be ready tomorrow," she said softly. He nodded once. 2 p.m. I'll be here." She watched him walk away and realized with a start that she already cared what happened to him. And that terrified her more than the performance she'd agreed to give. The hospital room was warm with late afternoon sunlight the next day. Lily walked in holding a bouquet of lilies, pale blue gown peeking from beneath her coat. She felt like an actress stepping onto a strange stage with no script. Alex walked beside her, shoulders squared and hands clenched so tightly she could see his knuckles whiten. A nurse greeted them and led them down a quiet hallway. At the end, a door stood slightly open, soft voices drifting out. "Mom," Alex said gently as they entered. The woman on the bed turned. Her hair was thin, her skin pale, but her eyes, bright green and full of light, sparked the moment she saw them. "Oh," she breathed, looking from her son to Lily. "Oh, Alex, she's beautiful." Lily felt heat rise in her cheeks. Alex opened his mouth to speak, to explain, to confess perhaps, but his mother reached out and took Lily's hand firmly. "You look just like her," she whispered. Lily's heart skipped. "Like Sophie," the older woman added, tears gathering at the edges of her eyes. The name settled between all three of them like a ghost. Lily's breath trembled, but she didn't pull her hand away. "Thank you for coming, darling," Mrs. Carter said softly. "I knew my boy would find someone with a kind soul. He always had good taste in people." Alex's jaw flexed, his eyes glazing briefly. He looked like he wanted to say, "It's not what you think," but the words wouldn't move from his throat. So Lily made a decision. She squeezed the older woman's hand gently and smiled. "Thank you for having me." They spent the next hour drifting in and out of light conversation. A nurse rolled in a small cart with soup, bread, and tea. Mrs. Carter talked about how Alex used to show up to school wearing mismatched socks and insisting it was creative expression. She teased him about a childhood crush, and Lily laughed, listening quietly. Alex watched her more than he ate. The way she angled her body toward his mother, the way she listened as if every word mattered, the way her laughter softened the room, pushing away the cold edge of the hospital. For the first time in a long time, he saw his mother smile without effort. He knew then that whatever this had cost him, it had been worth it. At one point, Lily stood to stretch, wandering over to the dresser. Above it on a small shelf stood a framed wedding photo. A blonde woman in a white dress laughed, turned halfway toward the camera, her eyes full of life. Alex stood beside her, younger, freer, gaze fixed on his bride like she was the only thing in existence. Lily's breath caught. The resemblance wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to sting. "This is what he sees when he looks at me," she realized. Not Lily. Sorry. For a second the room felt smaller, the air thinner. She stepped back. "I'll just make a quick call," she murmured, not trusting her voice to stay steady. She stepped into the hall and leaned against the wall, inhaling sharply. What was she doing? She had walked into a life that did not belong to her, into memories that were not hers, into a love story that had ended in tragedy. She closed her eyes, pressed the palm of her hand to her chest, and took a breath. From inside she heard a sudden cough. Without thinking, she returned. "You came back," Mrs. Carter said, relief softening her features. "Of course," Lily replied, taking her hand again. She realized then that whatever this had started as, a role, a favor, a one-day lie, it had become something else. She wasn't just comforting a dying woman. She was holding pieces of a family that had been shattered. The drive back was quiet. The sky had turned a dusky lavender, clouds smudged over fading light. Streetlights flickered on one by one as they drove through the city. "She's lovely," Lily said finally, eyes on the window. "She is," Alex replied. "And your wife," Lily added gently. "I'm guessing she was too." The silence that followed was heavier than the last. He didn't answer right away. He gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, jaw working. Traffic lights shifted from green to yellow to red. Finally, at a stoplight, he spoke. "I still love her," he said quietly. "I don't think I ever stopped." Lily's fingers curled in her lap. I don't know if that makes me broken or loyal, he added after a moment. Maybe both. The light turned green. He drove. She didn't tell him it was okay. She didn't offer easy comfort. She just let his words sit between them, acknowledged, not judged. Because there in the dim, quiet car, two strangers shared something honest. They both knew what it was like to carry love and loss in the same heart. And though neither of them fully understood it yet, something between them had already begun to change. 3 days passed. Lily tried to slip back into her old routine, wake up, work, take care of her brother, sleep, repeat. Pretend nothing had shifted inside her. It didn't work. She caught herself glancing at the door of Bordeaux lights whenever it opened, half expecting him. She replayed the way his mother had squeezed her hand, the way he'd looked at her in that blue dress, the way his voice had broken when he talked about loving his wife still. She told herself it wasn't her business. Her heart didn't listen. The second invitation came quietly. No grand gesture, no flowers, just a short text from an unknown saved number. Dinner, no pressure, just food. She stared at it longer than she wanted to admit. No pressure, just food. Nothing in her life had ever been just anything. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally sending. Sure, just food. He picked her up after her shift 2 nights later. No driver this time. Just him in a simple navy sweater, dark jeans, and a coat that made him look less like a CEO and more like a man who had remembered he could be human. You look tired, he said as she slid into the passenger seat. You look like someone who thinks that's rude to point out, she shot back lightly. He smiled, not the polished polite one, a real one. Fair, he said. They drove through the city. Rain misted the windshield, streetlights streaking into soft lines as they passed. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt different now, less full of strangers, more full of possibilities. He took her to a tucked-away Italian place with brick walls, flickering candles, and the quiet clatter of plates from a half-open kitchen. No paparazzi, no business acquaintances, just a warm space where people came to eat and talk and forget. They chose a booth near the back. Order whatever you like, he said. I'm a waitress, she replied. I know better than to test that sentence. He chuckled, I meant it. She eventually settled on pasta and red wine. He did too. They both added garlic bread because what is life without regret, she joked. The food arrived hot and fragrant, and between bites, conversation slowly unfolded. What kind of movies do you like? He asked. Sad ones, she said without hesitation. The kind that hurt but in a good way, like a bruise you keep pressing because you need to know it's still there. He raised an eyebrow. That's specific. And foreign films, she added. Old ones, slow ones. The kind people call boring until they realize they're watching themselves. He nodded, makes sense. You, she asked. I used to like action movies, he said. Explosions, car chases, no thinking required. But lately, I only seem to make it through the quiet ones. The ones where nothing happens and everything happens. They're the worst, Lily said and smiled. And the best. He watched her for a moment, then leaned back. Before all this, she asked softly, before being Alex Carter's CEO, what did you want to be? For a moment, he looked away, as if the answer was hiding somewhere on the brick wall. I wanted to open a bookshop, he said. One with a cafe in the back, warm lights, old paperbacks, a corner where people could leave notes for strangers inside book covers. Lily blinked. She hadn't expected that. Seriously, she asked. He shrugged, slightly embarrassed. My wife and I, we had a name picked out actually, Chapter and Soul. She thought it sounded cozy. I thought it sounded dramatic. We loved it anyway. So why didn't you? Lily asked gently. Life got loud, he replied. and then it got quiet in all the wrong ways. He took a sip of wine, then nodded toward her. "What about you, before Bordeaux lights?" "Photography," she said. "Black and white mostly. People. The way they move when they think no one's paying attention." "You studied it?" "For a while," she answered. "Then my parents died. Suddenly I was 19 with a little brother who still believed the world was kind. Someone had to be the adult, so school could wait." "Did it?" he asked softly. Her jaw tightened. It had to. He didn't tell her she was brave. He didn't offer trite apologies. He just looked at her in that steady way that said, "I see you." And somehow, that felt better than any rehearsed sympathy. Later that week, rain came down harder. Lily finished a brutal shift and stepped outside to find the street slick and shining, water pooling at the edges of the curb. She hadn't brought an umbrella. Her coat was thin. The bus was late. She wrapped her arms around herself and stepped under the restaurant's awning, watching headlights smear past in streaks of white. A familiar gray sedan pulled up. The passenger side window rolled down. "You always stand in the rain hopping to catch pneumonia for fun?" Alex asked. "Or is this a special occasion?" She snorted despite herself. "Is that your way of offering me a ride?" "It's my way of suggesting hypothermia is not a personality trait," he said. "Get in." She did. He reached for the backseat, grabbed his coat and handed it to her. "Put it on," he said. "You're shaking." "Bossy," she muttered, but she slid into it anyway. It was warm and smelled faintly of cedar and something clean. "You always drive around rescuing waitresses from bad weather?" she asked as he pulled into traffic. "No," he said. "Only the ones who can shut down a 3-star complaint with a free tiramisu and a sincere apology." She laughed, the sound softer than she meant it to be. They didn't go straight to her place. He detoured to a small park, almost empty in the drizzle. The rain had weakened to a mist. Trees dripped quietly in the lamplight. Benches glistened with water. They sat under a small wooden shelter side by side, listening to the rain, breathing. He didn't try to fill the silence. She didn't force conversation. It was the kind of quiet that didn't demand anything from them. At some point, she realized his shoulders weren't as tense anymore. At some point, he realized his chest didn't hurt as much when he breathed. He turned his head just slightly, watching her beneath the dim light. Her hair was a little messy, cheeks pink from the cold, his coat wrapped tightly around her. She didn't look like Sophie right then. She looked like Lily. And for the first time, that thought didn't scare him. It calmed him. The first time Lily stepped into his house, it felt like walking into a magazine spread. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, soft, expensive furniture, a piano in the corner, art that looked like it belonged in a gallery, not a living room. His housekeeper greeted her with a kind smile. "He'll be home in 20 minutes. Can I make you some tea?" "That would be great," Lily replied. It was her third visit in a week. Alex had invited her for dinner, no performance, no hospital visit, no pretending, just dinner. She wandered the living room cautiously, afraid to touch anything, feeling like she'd accidentally trespassed into an entirely different life. A soft piano piece played from hidden speakers, haunting and slow, like someone thinking aloud in music. Down the hallway, a door stood half open. Curiosity tugged. She moved closer. Inside was a study, not cold and sterile like she expected, but worn in. Bookshelves, a heavy desk, a globe by the window, picture frames. Dozens of photos lay spread across the desk and pinned on a board above it. She stepped closer. In one, a blonde woman in a sundress laughed in a vineyard, head thrown back. In another, she slept with a book open on her chest. In another, she stood in a half-painted room, roller in hand, grinning at the camera. Sophie. The late wife she had heard only in hints and cracks in Alex's voice. A small box sat open on the desk. Inside were letters, folded neatly. One lay half out, as if someone had started to put it away and then changed their mind. Lily hesitated. Her fingers moved anyway, pulling it free, unfolding the page. "I am afraid to love again," it read, "because what if love dies again? What if I open the door just enough to breathe and grief walks in wearing a new face?" Her chest tightened. "Lily." His voice wasn't angry, it was quiet, uncertain. She turned. Alex stood in the doorway, hair slightly mussed from the wind outside, coat still on. His eyes flicked to the letter in her hand, then back to her face. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I shouldn't have." "It's okay," he said, stepping into the room. "I'm the one who left it out. I can't exactly blame you for being human. I didn't mean to invade." "You didn't," he said firmly. He walked past her to the desk and rested his hand on the wood, staring down at the open box. "I wrote that months ago," he said quietly. "Never sent it to anyone. I just needed somewhere to put the thoughts that wouldn't leave me alone." He turned to her fully now, walls lowered just enough that she could see the man behind them. "I didn't bring you into my life to replace Sophie," he said slowly. "You need to know that." Lily swallowed. "I just didn't realize," he added, voice breaking slightly, "how terrifying it would be to feel anything again, to laugh, to wait for a text, to care if someone showed up or not." He held her gaze. "When you're here," he continued, "it feels like I can breathe without feeling guilty for it." Tears pricked behind her eyes. "I don't want to be her," Lily whispered. "I don't want to stand in her shadow or wear her life. I just want to be me. If I'm here, it has to be as Lily, not as a replacement, not as a copy of something you lost." He took a slow breath. "Then let's start there," he said. "No more pretending, no more roles, just whatever this is as it is." She smiled faintly, "And no more unread letters." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Deal." She handed the page back. He slipped it into the box but didn't close it. Some chapters, they both knew, were never fully done. But maybe that didn't have to be a curse. One morning, Lily was called to the hospital by someone other than Alex. Mrs. Carter had asked for her. The old woman looked smaller than before, bones more pronounced beneath thin skin, but her eyes still held that spark. "Just us today," she said softly. "I told my son to go home and sleep for once." Lily laughed lightly, pulling a chair close and sitting beside her. "I'm not sure he remembers how." Mrs. Carter reached for her hand. Her fingers were cold but firm. "I wanted a moment alone with you," she said, "without my son hovering like an anxious goose." Lily smiled. "He cares about you." "I know," Mrs. Carter replied. "It's why I have to be honest with you." Lily's smile faded slowly. "I know," the older woman said gently, "that you're not really his girlfriend." Time stopped. Lily's heart slammed against her ribs. Her first instinct was to pull her hand away, but she didn't. She couldn't. She just sat, caught. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered. "I didn't." "Don't you apologize," Mrs. Carter said firmly. "You said yes to something complicated so a dying woman could have a little peace. You think I don't know a performance when I see one. I raised that boy. He sucks at acting." Despite everything, Lily laughed softly. "The thing is," Mrs. Carter continued, her gaze sharpening, "I don't think you've been pretending the whole time." Lily looked away, throat tight. "When he talks about you now," the older woman said, "he doesn't sound empty. He's been frozen ever since Sophie died. Not cruel, just paused, like someone hit stop on his life. You pressed play again." Tears burned behind Lily's lashes. "I'm not asking you to fix him," Mrs. Carter said gently. "You can't. No one can. But I wanted to thank you for making him feel anything at all, for giving him warmth again. That's all I ever wanted for him," she added softly, "for him not to be alone when I'm gone." Silence settled over them, heavy, tender. Lily squeezed her hand. He loves you so much. I know, the woman replied. That's why I can go in peace. The charity event at the hospital felt like a breath between storms. Tables had been set up in the courtyard. Balloons bobbed gently in the breeze. Children tugged on parents' sleeves, eyes bright. Nurses carried trays of snacks. A local musician played easy acoustic tunes. Alex had helped sponsor the event for the pediatric wing. Lily had volunteered to help him cook. They stood side by side behind a long folding table turned makeshift kitchen. Bowls of vegetables, bread, and pasta cluttered the surface. They moved around each other easily now, their bodies finding an unconscious rhythm. Careful, he said, that knife is. Too late. Ugh. Lily winced, staring at her finger as a small line of red appeared. Lily, he said sharply, immediately stepping closer. It's fine, she said quickly, embarrassed. Just a scratch. He grabbed a stack of napkins, taking her hand gently, wrapping her finger with a care that made her chest ache. His touch was light but firm, protective. Their hands stilled, his fingers around hers, her eyes lifting to meet his. The entire courtyard seemed to blur. No kids, no laughter, no music. Just his eyes, her breath, and the tension that had been simmering quietly for days. He leaned in. So did she. Their lips met softly, a slow, careful brush. No firework burst, no cinematic spin, just a tender, trembling connection between two people who hadn't meant to let anyone this close again. When they pulled apart, Lily's eyes stayed closed for a second longer, like she was afraid the world would change the moment she opened them. When she did, he wasn't smiling. He had stepped back. His expression, once open, now shuttered. I shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. The words cut more than the knife had. Why not? She whispered. I thought I was ready, he said, eyes darting away. I'm sorry. She felt something inside her sink. You told me no more pretending, she said softly. I know, he replied, voice strained. I'm trying, he broke off. I still feel like if I move too far forward, I'm stepping on her memory. There it was. The truth that had always been there, waiting for a moment to sting. Lily nodded slowly, trying to breathe past the lump in her throat. I understand, she said, even though it hurt. Really, I do. She pulled her hand from his. Then she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there among cutting boards and half-sliced vegetables, watching her retreat. Her steps were steady, but he could feel the distance growing with each one. He had told her no more pretending. But he was the one still living with ghosts. Days passed. Lily stopped answering his messages. She stopped showing up at the restaurant. The number she'd given him for emergencies went straight to voicemail, every single time. He left 3 messages. The first was formal, controlled, an apology dressed in structure. The second was shorter, rawer. The third he didn't remember half of, just his voice lower than usual, asking her, begging her, to call him back so he could say the words he hadn't known how to say before. There was no reply. The city felt different without the possibility of running into her, in some random corner of his day. He went to the hospital. When he walked into his mother's room, she took one look at his face and sighed. You lost her, didn't you? She asked. She was never mine, he said quietly, sinking into the chair beside her. Don't play semantics with an old woman, she snorted weakly. You lost her. He stared at the floor. I hurt her, he admitted. I panicked. I kissed her and then made her feel like a mistake. What do you feel when she's around? Mrs. Carter asked. Like the world is real again, he said slowly. Like colors came back. Then why, she asked, are you still sitting here? He didn't have an answer. But he knew she was right. 10 minutes later, he was in his car, driving with purpose he hadn't felt in years. Lily's apartment building was old but clean, on a quiet street that smelled faintly of fresh laundry and dust. He climbed the stairs, his heart pounding harder with each step. The landlord was carrying a mop bucket down the hall when Alex introduced himself. "Room 304, the man said, shrugging. "Yeah, she moved out this morning. Left the key, paid up. Nice girl, didn't say much." Something in Alex's chest twisted. He walked to 304 anyway. The door still stood ajar. Inside, the room was nearly empty. No sheets on the bed, no clothes in the closet, no photos on the walls. Just silence. And on the desk, a single photograph face down. He picked it up. It was a black and white shot, grainy, imperfect, and full of soul. He recognized the scene immediately. Him on a park bench under the rain shelter, coat off, shoulders slumped, staring out at the trees the night he'd given her a ride home. His expression was softer than he remembered. Peaceful. He turned it over. On the back, in small, careful handwriting, were 5 words. "You looked at peace here." He closed his eyes. She had seen him. The real him. Not the CEO. Not the widower. Just the man who had forgotten what it felt like not to be haunted. She captured that moment and left it behind like a confession. When he opened his eyes, something inside him had shifted. Lily wasn't the shadow of his past. She was the possibility of his future. And this time, he refused to let fear make his decisions for him. If this love story made your heart feel softer, reminded you that second chances exist, and that real love can grow from kindness, honesty, and healing, don't forget to like and share it with someone who needs hope today. And if you want more gentle, emotional stories like this, full of quiet moments, deep romance, and souls finding their way back to light, make sure to subscribe to Kindness and Love Tailies. Tap the bell so you never miss the next story that might just touch your heart in the way you didn't know you needed.